Hi, I'm Trevor Lund of RevTrev.com, and in this week's episode of RevTrev TV, I'm continuing my discussion with Mike Stickler of the Vision Group at thevisiongroupltd.com. And today we're talking about writing grants, we're talking about fundraising, and today we want to talk about the fear factor in fundraising. I often get approached by groups and local groups that know me about, doing fundraising for them, and I've never taken the gig because it's always like, how do I raise? This is for me. How do I overcome that fear factor for fundraising? I don't know. One, I need the information that you teach people if I'm going to do that, because I don't have a clue where to start. Two, I need your shared experience, but you probably know a lot more to overcoming this fear factor. How do you tell people to overcome, what are the steps? What do we need to do to overcome the fear factor in fundraising?
Well, most people haven't stopped to realize that their approach is 99% of the time their approach is wrong. We today typically we see a need and we approach a funder based on need. Now, there's two types of fundraising in my view. There's needs-based fundraising and vision-based fundraising. A needs-based approach is something that you're familiar with. We see the Christian Child's Fund on TV, and typically it looks like there's a little child there with a bloated tummy because he hasn't eaten, flies in his mouth and his eyes. And a big Caucasian guy comes walking up next to him and says, "Little Johnny, for $39 a month, you can save little Johnny. He can eat, he can go to school, and he can become the president of the United States."
Yeah.
That's a needs-based approach. We also see needs-based approaches when our local homeless mission sends out every Christmas, it sends out a whole bunch of letters that say something along the lines of $29 or $10 will feed a homeless person, provide a bed, those kinds of things. Well, we're very familiar with needs-based approaches, but when they're overused, they start to feel like begging.
Right.
When they're overused, the funder looks at it and says, "When are you ever going to get your act together and solve this problem?" When they're overused, we get tired of being asked for it. The truth is that the world is pretty jaded, and we get tired of approaching a funder over and over again with that. So we get fearful with it because we're afraid we're going to get rejected. And so that approach, when we make it based in need, is a half-hearted approach. And we feel like we're either begging or manipulating in order to get it, which it feels wrong inside. And
that's the key. That's for me. I don't want to manipulate and I don't want to beg. That's exactly it.
It's because we approach incorrectly.
Okay.
The correct approach needs to be based in vision. Vision says, where are we going to go? How are we going to make a difference? If I'm pastoring a church, it's how am I going to impact my community with the gospel? How am I going to make Jesus famous with the gospel? If I'm running a homeless mission, am I going to end homelessness in my community? And I believe you can. If it's about domestic violence, if it's about building homes, whatever you're doing, you have to have a clear and compelling vision that is achievable, that people get excited about and want to get aboard. And then all of a sudden when the needs come up, legitimate needs come up, you have so many people following and excited about what you're doing that they say, "Hey, I want to help. How can I meet this need? Or how can I do this thing?" Or whatever the issue is. And what follows behind the vision is the income. People give based in vision as a byproduct to their engagement in the vision. Did you hear what I just said?
No, yeah. Say that one more time. They give.
Yeah, they give based on, as a byproduct, based on the involvement of their vision.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm more excited about where we're going and what we're trying to achieve, I'm more interested in funding. It just becomes natural. I want to fund, I want to support, and I want to be part of. And you've seen it, Trev, you've seen it in churches. Churches are You know, the old 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
20% are involved, 80% aren't. Well, it really needs to be, if you're really casting a vision and getting people involved, it turns around. It's 80% are involved and 20% are on the process of being involved.
we I'm laughing because up in Canada we've got, it's called Revenue, or I forget what it's called. Revenue Canada used to be called, um, but that's the income tax and charity license. And they came down with a ruling when I was pastoring here. That's basically, their rule was basically they need detached, disinterested giving in order to receipt it as a charity. And I'm like, that is such an oxymoronic thing to say. If I don't care about it, if I don't, like, why am I going to give? It's not, you know, like
Right.
what they're saying is someone couldn't give and then say, oh, I didn't, you know, if I give to this church, I can't say it's got to go to this project, you know, unless there's ways around it. But basically, that's what they're trying to get rid of. But it's so important that people do catch the vision and are connected and are invested. And it's got to go. How do you move it beyond just an emotional investment? Like, what what are some ways that you do that with your givers or your um, yeah, with the giving?
It really doesn't matter if they're, you know, givers are people that are generous. Doesn't always have to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
Generosity for a very wealthy person is hours. Giving away time is more important to them than money. For a retired person, giving away time is easier than giving away money, even if they have a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so the way you have to get them involved is we have an intentional process we teach people. And that intentional process basically means they have to hear the vision first, then you need to help them see the vision next,
Mm-hmm.
then you need to help them catch the vision next. And once they catch the vision, they'll become owners of the vision.
Mm.
And see, what we do is we're not intentional about that. As leaders, what we do is we just tell them the vision and then expect them to get it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
Rick Warren says that you have to share vision every 29 days because at the 28th day, they all forgot.
What's the most common reason ministries miss funding opportunities?
It's that lack of vision, that if you don't have a clear and compelling vision in your own heart and it's not written down and it's not built into the DNA of your organization, you can't write it down in a proposal. It doesn't demonstrate itself in your brochures. It doesn't demonstrate itself in your sermons. It doesn't. People aren't connected to it
Mm-hmm.
because you don't continually remind people what this vision that looks like.
I think it's so key. Was the last time that you said about you getting the vision from God? You know, it just can't be my vision. It just can't be, you know, this is what I want to do and push it forward, especially when you're in a ministry. Because um, what's your take? Like I've seen something in churches, and I like your input on this. I've seen churches that, you know, they're started with a specific call. They've got it's almost like a prophetic call. It's sometimes it is a prophetic call. You know, it's they've got that purpose, and they start doing that purpose a certain way. And over time, that way doesn't work, or that way falls away, or a new pastor comes in with a new vision, and everything needs to fall away because the new pastor has a new vision. And every time I've seen a church move away from source, its source, not, you know, it's it might as well be dead. You know, it collapses. Like I really like. I don't think we use the same methods as was used years ago. I don't think we need to do that. But the things that God created that church for need to always express itself through the vision that God gives us for today. Does that make any sense to you, or can strong leadership change the vision of a church?
Well, there's leadership that God gives a vision to a leader, and there's God gives a vision to the corporate church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way I see leadership in the church setting, especially, is you're just God's man or woman for the hour,
Mm.
no more, no less. As soon as you start thinking you're more than all that, is when you start to get yourself into trouble, and you start to, as the Apostle John said, quoting Jesus, "Apart from me, you can do nothing."
Mm-hmm.
And what we end up doing is nothing. It seems like a whole lot of something, but in God's economy, it's nothing. And so when we're not connected in that but abiding relationship, both as a leader and corporately following his direction and his vision, abiding in him for every step of the way, we end up doing things that are under our own strengths. And I got to tell you, in my own life, I was a catalyst of starting a national, on its way to being a worldwide ministry, and I was doing it on my own strength.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a wreck over time because it wasn't the direction that the Lord had for me. And each of us have to get a hold of that. And I think one of the reasons we get off on these tracks is we're so busy looking for a program on how to operate that we find one, and the program doesn't take us where we want to go. We're on little train tracks going the wrong direction, or in part of the wrong direction.
That's really good advice and astute observation. I want to thank you, Mike, for being with us today on RevTrev TV. And next week, in the next episode, we're going to talk about how the economy is affecting ministries. I'm really interested in that discussion. So thank you, Mike. Check Mike out at thevisiongroupltd.com. There'll be a link on revtrev.com for it, and hope that you check out his resources. He's got some really good training material for, we'll talk about that too in another episode about all the materials you have. But anyway, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
This episode has been brought to you by Expectancy Press, resources that impart hope and empower destiny. When you choose to purchase products from expectancypress.com, you're supporting the work of Expectancy Ministries. Are you a little afraid to do what God's told you to do? Get a copy of How Big Is Your Butt by Trevor Lund today.